Okay, so it's always fun when we have these situations going on in our lives um, that lead us to a place where we're not comfortable. And as Jews, as rabbis, etc., we are very used to being in places where we are comfortable potentially. And it's really fascinating because if you look at how so much of the Jewish world has developed over the past, let's say, 20 years, we've worked really well on explaining all of the explainable things in our life. And in a way, it's comfortable because you can wrap so many things up in these like nice little bows. And as someone that, again, I'm dancing around it a little bit, but the Jewish world has been really good at explaining all of these like scary things away. And we have these ideas, how to explain the Holocaust per se, and how to explain tragedy, and how to explain this, that, the other thing. And it's all well and nice and put together. Now, the problem is that as we go through the unprecedented, the crazy times, right? The really crazy times. So there's a certain pressure that comes on us, the rabbis, potentially people that are putting out content of what we're supposed to say, right? Everyone right away jumps on, you saw it with Zoom and it was wonderful. Everyone goes to the synagogue now. And let's be honest, I don't think that they're looking for a new Hine Motovu song, like a new theme that's nice, right? And some people want to go to services, etc. But most people, when tragedy strikes, most people, or uncertainty comes, most people desire some lesson, some idea. They're coming to look for faith. We're going back to faith. And that's fascinating because as the faith provider, so to speak, as the person giving over the lesson, sometimes it's not so easy to say something because we might not know what's going on, right? So that's a deeply troubling thing. And what's even more troubling is there's so many people that can jump up and actually start to talk about, well, this is what's going on, this is why it has to happen, and it puts us all into a nice little box. As I mentioned, there was a famous rabbi who recently wrote, like, stop trying to say the Messiah is coming. Again, we all believe the Messiah is coming, but like, stop saying, oh, COVID, the Messiah is coming. Oh, the riots, the Messiah is coming. Now, of course, that makes everyone feel much more comfortable because you think, assuming you want the Messiah to come, which perhaps we can speak about another time, but not now, but like, it's superficial. And one of the points the rabbi said was that it's like maybe it doesn't come. And every single time in Jewish history where things were difficult for us, we had a tendency to say, the Messiah is here. There was a whole thing after Shabbatai Tzvi in I believe it was the middle to late 1750s. What happened was that all of the Jews started to say, okay, Messiah is coming, and they it's not funny. They went up to the neighbors that had been oppressing them for thousands of years, or maybe 1,000 years, maybe 500 years, slapped them in the face. There's this huge resurgence coming back into the Jewish world. We have like this confidence again. But then we know the story about Shabbatai Tzvi. What happened? The the Sultan of the Ottomans, I forgot, or the king, whatever it was, basically said, convert to Islam, or all kinds of bad things will happen to you. And he converted to Islam. Of course, he had a great a person that was like his PR manager or his marketing guru, whatever it might be, whatever you want to call it back in the day. Really, he's not converting. It's a test. You have to believe him. Whole like crazy things. But at the end of the day, like he converts and he dies. And it drives people into crazy depression because we were only able to deal with our challenges and our struggles because we attributed to this like big thing, this wide open thing. So now it's very interesting because we don't want to add a level of disappointment on top of the trauma that we necessarily feel. We don't want to add a level of unexpected hope. We don't want to put our guard down. We don't want to expect that things necessarily will work out. And again, you're using this against the backdrop of history and the broad worldwide picture of history. And you're like, yeah, things will be okay. But we all know that things might not, things might get worse before they get better. Things might not be that bad. It's fascinating. There's a whole discussion now. And again, I love it because it's so brilliant. Both sides, the right and the left, are both talking about the role of social media. You got to get Trump off the social media, or you got to shut down the social media because it's being used by protesters, right? So it's like, and everyone's like going on both sides of it, and how do you make it make sense? And at the end of the day, like let's call a spade a spade. most of us have absolutely no idea what ultimately is going to be the best for us. And because we always try to artificially, and I have this is a deep idea, right? That I have always spent, again, God willing, I'll live to be 120. But I've had what I like to call a midlife crisis. Midlife crisis was started when I was like 25. And it's been going on. And I'm bouncing and trying to find my way. I'm always trying to end my midlife crisis. Ironically, it doesn't end. Ironically, you never just kind of hit this, again, I don't, hit this stride of absolute clarity. We know exactly what I want to do. I've had everything worked out. But my desire to end my crises early only led me to have a tremendous amount of despair, right? Because when I'm trying to end the crisis early, when I'm trying to say I've got everything figured out, this happened also, I'm not sure, I share an idea. I have a client, and the client mentioned to me, I want you to coach me. I don't need therapy because I've already worked through all my issues. And then he proceeded to talk about, not realizing it, that all of the things that he thought he had solved was deeply affecting him today. And I'm like, buddy, I appreciate you solved your issues, but probably your biggest issue is you think you've gotten past it, because you and I both know, based on this conversation, that it's still deeply affecting you. So there's a certain concept that we shouldn't try to artificially end a challenge. Now, again, what does that mean practically speaking, unless you think I've gone completely out of my box? So should we try to keep ourselves safe in this uncertain time? However you want to define uncertain, depending on when you're watching it, whether it's looters, whether it's COVID, whether it's this, that, the other thing, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. Yes, everyone should take all necessary precautions. And on top of it, let's not forget that stress is a big problem, and depression's a big problem, and health is a big problem, and more people die from being fat and unhealthy in America by like a cajillion than end up dying from COVID, right? So we have these things and that's like the best ever. And then you have automobile accidents, right? That's a big problem. You have all there is so many challenges in the world. So we've gotten momentary, again, the same thing was awesome, not awesome in a tragic way, but it's like if you look at COVID. Everyone's so shocked about COVID. And now it's like protesting. And thankfully the mayor of Minnesota is like, hey, social distancing is 10,000 people burn down buildings. I'm not laughing. It's not funny. But it's like we just kind of jump from shocking tragedy to shocking tragedy. And it's like we just forget then that all the other crazy stuff might still be going on. So how do we relate to all of these kinds of things? I think it has to start with a fundamental thing, which is to appreciate that we can structure our experience however we want. A person should be careful. They should do everything they can to keep themselves safe and healthy. And then on top of that, and this is so interesting, it's a very, very deep idea, right? And my wife and I have this discussion because she's terrified about COVID, and I think that I worry a lot about looting and rioting coming through our neighborhood, right? So she's dousing herself in the hand sanitizer, right? And I'm sitting there looking out the window, waiting for the cavalry to come rolling in, and she says, you're so crazy. Go to bed. What are you worried about? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like with the hand sanitizer, you have to put it everywhere 15 times, right? And it's fascinating because both of us have this completely we're both worried about different kinds of things. So the first step, first and foremost, is to do, again, this is from a basic Jewish perspective, do your hishtadlus. Lock the doors, try to keep yourself safe, follow the CDC or the WHO, whatever you like to follow, the government, not the government, your mother, whatever it might be, do the things that are going to keep you healthy, keep people happy, fine, fantastic. After that, you have to appreciate that you don't have to make yourself crazy by sucking down all of the nuts things that people put out there, right? So you tell yourself, again, if you want to, great. There are certain people that love to go to horror movies. I was never one of those people, but if you're a person that loves horror movies, great. So you're going to go to a horror movie, you'll get freaked out, and very good. You have a good time. There are other people that like wild, the wild roller coaster rides. Okay, fantastic. People like to subject themselves to terrifying, scary experiences. Now, if that's what you like to do, admit that's what you're doing. If you choose not to, if you're the kind of person that says, I have enough, again, I had this feeling after I watched a certain film. It was a great buddy cop movie, and at the end, one guy dies and the other guy almost dies. And I was like, my life has enough challenge in it that I don't need to come to this stupid show to get the basing of reality, right? I wanted to kind of move out and kind of live vicariously through this movie, and I thought it was fantastic. I don't need extra depression in my life because life is a challenge as it is, right? So this is a fascinating idea because so often what do? We jump up in the morning. Again, if you did it with COVID, if you did it with what's it called, with the riots, if you do it with Trump or Biden, or you do it with eating unhealthy food or whatever it might be, or the murder hornets, or the what are they called? There's like some rodents now, murder hornets, and then there's cannibal rodents or something like that. Cannibal rats, I heard those are coming to a theater near you, and like you could spend your whole life watching all of these terribly tragic things on the news. And usually what that means is not that anything is actually worse than you thought it was. What it means is there's a part of you that just loves being freaked out. And if you think to yourself, I don't really like being freaked out so much, there's a really easy way to do it. It's not getting, again, somebody asked me, and frankly, okay, I will just be totally candid. Somebody asked me, he said, what do you think we should do about racial injustice and all of the looting? And I'm like, I'm a rabbi. And the person's like, yeah, well, what's your solution? And I'm like, don't murder and don't destroy property. He's like, yeah, but what's your big? I'm like, dude, if I had the solution to either of those things, I'd either be like the president potentially, or I would be running, I'd be running the anti-looting task force, or whatever you want to say. I have no idea. I'm a guy. I read the Bible the same way that you read the Bible. Why do you think that there's some deep solution that you have? Right? So it's like, if you want to create, so again, we think to ourselves, I have to solve every problem in order to relax. No, you don't. Maybe what you have to do is just disconnect from all of this stuff that comes out there in order to relax, right? The worst looting as of right now, God willing, and it'll be the worst, was over Shavuot, right? Shavuot, I didn't have access to anything, to my phone, my internet. I didn't worry about it. I went to bed Friday night. I'm like, yeah, I think everything's going to be okay, right? Wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. So the first and the most important thing that we can start to do is to realize that if we choose, if we want to, and again, this is the idea of being able to make a choice. If you're the kind of person that loves to drive yourself crazy, that loves to feel that level of anxiety and freak out and get frustrated, just like you're the kind of person, again, how do you know that you're that kind of person? You like to watch horror movies, right? If that's the kind of person you are, great. Stay on the news and enjoy it. If you say to yourself, God, this is tough, I'm freaked out, disconnect from the news, right? Disconnect from all that stuff, because it's creating more drama in your life. It's creating more frustration. So that's the first thing, is that we have to appreciate on a very fundamental level that we can control the things that go into our minds and in our heads and etc. Now, frankly, as I pointed out previously, right, we get it with COVID, right? You go into Costco and you wipe your hands off afterwards. You're wearing a mask if you live in any of the states that make you wear masks, right? We're so aware that maybe the woman I walked by will either give me or get coronavirus, COVID from me. Like, we have to disinfect everything. On the flip side, we'll spend 35 hours on the news watching all the terrible things that are befalling people and think that doesn't affect us. It doesn't affect us for the negative. It does. It totally does. So number one is you have to learn how to create peace in your own life. There's a famous story about, there's an idea that the tallis, right, the prayer shawl that the Jewish men wear, so you're not supposed to fold it up nicely on Shabbat, right? So after Shabbos, there's an idea that the first thing you do is you fold your tallis. It's a segula. It's a sign for marital harmony. Why? Because the idea is the wife gives the husband the tallis and you want to take care of that. Okay, great. Now, practically speaking, there was a guy that was spending hours and hours, not hours, whatever it was, a very long time folding his tallis after Shabbat. And the rabbi goes over him and says, what's going on over there, Mr. OCD? Like, are you okay? He says, yeah, we're having marital problems, so I'm trying to take time to properly fold my tallis. And the rabbi said back to him, I think if you're having marital problems, it'd be more effective for you to go home and to help out your wife so that she didn't hate you so much for not being home. And he said, oh, okay, I never thought about that. So there's an idea. We have a tendency as people to throw so much reliance, so to speak, on other people, on God, on our neighbors, on the news to create a peace of mind for us. And it's like 9 out of 10 things that you could do it yourself. And you just got to do it, right? So what do you want? What things do you want to expose yourself to? What are the things that you value, that you want? That's point number one. Point number two is, well, let's say that's point number two. Point number one is don't try to artificially solve a crisis, right? Don't try to say, okay, we're going through travails and at the end of this, it's all going to be okay. We have no idea, right? We have absolutely no idea. And so then there's this concept of which we want to speak about, this idea of surrender. What does surrender mean? Surrender means to say that I will be able to handle whatever comes my way. I will be able to handle whatever comes my way. Now, if you have that sense, again, this is a very, very deep idea, right? Because now, again, everybody, and again, I love this, and I'll try to be real with everybody here because, like, why not? There's this book that went around the Jewish world, The Garden of Emunah, and all of the wonderful books that were written by that author. And there's another amazing author who I had the tremendous opportunity to have on my podcast, Rav Laser Brody, and they go around the world and they're spreading Emunah. Emunah is faith. But the interesting thing is that for a lot of people, like, they go to these things, again, it's the best. People are awesome. People go around and they watch the beautiful tour, right? But then something bad happens in their life, and like actually really bad things happen in their life, right? So it could be that there's marital discord, or they could lose their job, or they could get sick, and they tell themselves, they're like, if only I had Emunah, or I don't have Emunah, if I just had more Emunah, whatever it might be, everything would be fine. And then they think to themselves, I'm a bad person because I don't have Emunah. So now they have tragedy, and then they have judgment on top of that of why they're so bad, right? Because if only I had more faith, right, then this whole thing would go away, X and Y and Z, or this whole thing's a punishment, and God hates me. And like, it's fascinating because you see deeply religious people that are making these fundamental errors where they're thinking to themselves like, if I was just better, this wouldn't hurt. Or, right, the reason why I'm hurting is because I'm a bad person. I hear people say this all the time. Now, if I would ask you, maybe it's true. Yeah, for sure, maybe it's true. But the question is like, how does that perception, how does that idea make you feel? Does it make you feel better? Does it make you feel stronger or incapable or anything like that? And the answer is overwhelmingly, of course, no. Right? On the flip side, so again, you have to think ideas that are going to make you feel good. And again, I throw people off track all the time with this because a person will come to me with all kinds of problems, or I'll come to myself with all kinds of problems. And then I'll ask them, this is like a question that changed my life. And I say this to clients all the time, and hopefully it changes their life. I say, how do you want to feel? Right? How do you want to feel? Thank you for all the love. So the idea is, the way that I want to feel is, and then you think to yourself. So if you think, I want to feel stressed out, I want to feel negative, I want to feel less than, I want to feel, broken and weak and pathetic, great. So think the kinds of thoughts you're thinking. On the flip side, if you tell yourself, I want to feel empowered, I want to feel open, I want to feel in control. So then why don't you try a different idea? This idea comes from a famous book called Emunah v'Bitachon, I think, right, by the Chazon Ish, a famous rabbi in Israel, and it's called Emunah B'Tachon, basically faith and trust in God, right? And so one of the things he says in that book is that we think, erroneously, that if we're just good boys and girls, right, that there'll be no problems in the world. Now, again, I don't know about you. I don't think that's how it works, right? But he says that real faith is that whatever happened, it's like I can stand it, and that's ultimately what was supposed to happen. So now, again, on one hand, it's very scary. Now, this is we're gonna get really, really deep now if we could, and then we'll end it, right? But very deep idea. But there's this crazy idea that we have on the other side of safety is freedom, right? That so often we have this idea, on one hand, we want to play safe, and on the other hand, we want to be free. And when a person is playing safe, they're never going to be free. They've locked themselves in this little careful box where nothing can get to them, and it's very sterile, and they're far away from other people. They don't see anything that could be potentially offensive. They don't push themselves, all that kind of stuff. Is that safe? 1,000,000%. Is it free? Not at all. You're a complete slave. On the other hand, freedom is at the other side from safety. Freedom means putting yourself out there. Freedom means going for it. I read there's an amazing book called The Wisdom of Psychopaths, right? Not a Jewish book, fascinating psychological study about how psychopaths, their minds work in such a way they don't have so much fear and they don't necessarily go back and think about the effects that have happened in the past. Which ultimately, again, now you think to yourself, well, that's a problem. And like potentially it could be. On the flip side, oftentimes we get so beat down by experience. I literally have people to tell me this. It's like, I'm never going to change. I can't change that. I can't do that. It's been a million times the other way and I'm never going to go back. So that ideology is the epitome of safe. It's the opposite of freedom, though, because people that are living with the sense that it is the way it is and there's no way to change it, so then you're locked in. You're completely locked in and you can't change your life. But we want to have that freedom in our life. So the flip side is to think from a big question, what do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? And an even deeper question that you could ask is, what or how can I look at the situation? Like, how do I want to show up in this case? So again, you can find an abundance of information out there. Every rabbi, priest, clergy, everyone uses tragedy to basically explain to you what the lesson they care about is, why this is happening. On the flip side, maybe we have absolutely no idea. We don't have prophets anymore. We don't know. And therefore, if you want, you can leverage this experience as asking deep questions about things that you can control. So question number one is, how do I want to feel while I go through this, right? What kind of condition do I want to be? Do I want to be always just sucking in all the negativity? Do I want to generate calm and peace and fulfillment? Do I want to feel in control of my life? And if the answer is yes, so then what do? We, again, like I said, go very, very, very quickly through what I said. You want to take control of your life. You want to take control of what you're paying attention to. You want to think to yourself, how do I want to feel? And again, is it possible that God hates you? Is it possible that you're just a bad person? And if you were a little bit better, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yeah, I mean, anything's possible, right? Not really, though, because we know there's a fundamental idea, Olam Chesed Yibane, the world was built with kindness. And this idea that God loves us deeply. But so few people actually think like that. They actually think that it's like, and it's like a sad thing a little bit. And you look around at the world, and like the world's a tough place, right? So then if you think to yourself on a very deep level, though, how do I want to come out of this? If God loves me, what is he trying to teach me with this? And think of it like a parent to a kid. The kid's going through a hard time. Again, I have kids. I am a kid to my parents, and like at those moments when the kid's suffering, the parent is usually, or in a healthy relationship, the parent's sitting there on the kid's side, kissing the kid, encouraging the kid, telling the kid, you can totally do it. And if that's what we are able to do as parents, it's not that far to expect that that's what God's doing to us. So instead of sitting back in abject terror, all we should do is to look at these trying times as tremendous opportunities. Of what? For what? For growth. What does that look like? I can't answer that for you. I can only answer that for myself. But you could ask that question for yourself, and as you start to develop that out, it gives you the fortitude to be able to handle anything, and it also gives you excitement about the future. Thank you very much for listening.